In this episode of Vinyl Haul, I've got mostly death metal, but also a little thrash and a tribute album as well. Plus, I'll talk about a cool European exclusive single from a legendary heavy metal band. So yeah, stick around. First up is the 11th studio album from Norwegian death metal band Blood Red Throne. This is Nonagon, released in 2024 by Soul Cellar Records. So a dissonant riff and slow drums bring us quickly into mid-pace crunch and deep gutturals. And for the most part, Nonagon settles into that mid-pace, but with some moments of alternating blast and melody. Really dig the raspy scream and growl combo, notably in some of the choruses. And quite a bit of the album's variety really does come from their new singer. Speaking of whom, he is Sindre Wathna Jonsson of Deception. Also, I'm digging the moments of melodic guitar work, occasionally dipping into the harmonic, but also never overstaying its welcome as the shifts to brutal death metal are consistently quick. The solos in particular are when this style really shines. Some of the riffing occasionally skitters into rapid thrash, which adds a bit more flavor to the record. Overall, some hugely catchy riffs, whether groove-laden, thrashy, or straight death. Also, bass is prominent with a bright and clangy tone, adding some additional color to the tracks. I should mention that there is a bit of a concept album here, with each track covering the 9 circles of hell from Dante's Inferno. The lyrics take some liberties here and there, so it's not exactly a rigid theme throughout. Also, the tracks here are of a decent length, generally hovering around the 4.5-minute mark. That is, except for the final track, Flesh Rend, which clocks in at almost 7 minutes. Some folks have griped about that track length, but for me the song moves along quite well, so no issues here. It's a pretty decent album closer. Anyways, vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP, brown, black marble. Also comes with a printed inner sleeve. You get the full lyrics there, credits, and all of that on the reverse. Favorites on this record, definitely Ode to the Obscene, pretty cool song. Also Tempest, Sculptor, and of course Blade Eulogy. So Nonagon really does tick off so many of the boxes for me. I mean, it's brutal, it's melodic where it counts, there are plenty of engaging riffs, and definitely enough variety to keep it interesting, but also cohesive. I do catch some scant moments of Cannibal Corpse, but perhaps by way of Bloodbath, if that's helpful. Anyways, a solid death metal record and absolutely recommended. Next is the 6th studio album from American technical thrash metal band Sadus. This is The Shadow Inside, released in 2023 by Nuclear Blast Records. So a calm and melodic intro opens the album and then quickly fades and then drops into an almost martial riff, followed by total speed interspersed with various time shifts, much of which Sadus is known for. Speaking of which, you of course get those very familiar screechy screams, chaotic solos, and furious drumming. Sadus still has core members Darren Travis and John Allen covering most of the musical bases, but also letting in a couple of guest musicians to fill things out, such as Claudius Kramer of Possessed and Juan Ortiega of A Band of Orcs. I've talked about Ortiega before, mostly in his production capacity, which he also co-handles on this record. The guy has also produced and engineered for the likes of Cattle Decapitation, Exodus, Heathen, and Testament, to name a few. Production here is fairly well balanced, though a bit of concentration on the drums, which is often very typical in thrash. I do hear some bass, though it's a little buried at times. And speaking of bass, no Steve DiGiorgio here, of course. I mean, it's been almost a decade since his departure, and although he was important in giving this band a unique sound in its early days, he's clearly settled in with Testament at this point. But because of that absence, some listeners might not give modern Sadus a chance, which is a real shame because there's quite a bit to dig here. Anyways, in many cases this is classic Sadus. Again, you get the time shifts, the screechy vocals, and all of that. There are some mid-pace moments on the record that contrast the usual frenzied speed of former offerings. Scorched and Burnt comes to mind. The groove is also here, brought with crunching and catchy riffing. Check out Pain for an example of that. Good track variety here as well, each of which with its own identity. Cover on this one is by Travis Smith, who's done tons of other bands' work, including Overkill, Malevolent Creation, Catatonia, Iced Earth, Flotsam and Jetsam, and again, many, many other bands. Pretty cool work. Anyways, vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP, red and silver swirl with black splatter. It is limited to 2,700 copies. Here. Also get a sheet here. Picture of both members of the band, some credits, and lyrics on the back. As for favorites, of course, Scorched and Burnt. It's an amazing song. Check it out. Also, Ride the Knife and No Peace. I'm also digging the slow and ponderous instrumental track, New Beginnings. It brings in some change without breaking the flow, and also leads into the very strong title track, which ends the record really well. Music videos are available for It's the Sickness, Ride the Knife, Scorched and Burnt, Anarchy, and First Blood. The first 3 are at the Nuclear Blast YouTube channel, and the last 2 are found at the Sadus YouTube channel. So I definitely have some history with this band, notably with the first 3 albums. And while this record stands in good company with those classics, it might not be as memorable for some folks. Though to be fair, it is a real step up from the previous 2 albums, so there's that. There's certainly some of that old school meets modern day thing going on here, as you might suspect. Overall, I'm really digging this, and it's on repeat listens. Maybe you might dig it as well. Next up is the first full-length studio album from American death metal band Blood Incantation. This is Starspawn, originally released in 2016 by Dark Descent Records, but now reissued in 2021 by Century Media Records. So a rolling assault of twisted riffs, atonal soloing, pounding drums, and deep distant growls start things off with the 13-minute opening track Vitrification of Blood, Part 1. Somehow it manages to be cavernous, psychedelic, and desolate, and those qualities often continue throughout the record. Lots of atmosphere at times, rather oppressive for the most part. Some of the aggression from the previous EP is still here, though they do seem to double down a bit on the prog and groove by comparison. Can you sense that this album is a bit of an eclectic journey? Yeah, it is. Some of the death riffs might bring Morbid Angel to mind, with the more progressive bits leaning a little more into Gorguts territory. But I gotta say, I'm not really excited about this cover art with its blurriness and overall low-res look. I know maybe crappy was the intention, or that's just the way it ended up. Either way, we've seen better cover art from this band, and in fact, in just about all other cases. Anyways, vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP Classic Black, with the tracks listed on the reverse there for you. Also comes with a poster from the art on side A of that disc label, in case you liked it so much you want to hang it on your wall. Yeah, that'd be weird. We also have an insert with lyrics and credits and pictures of the band on the back. Also comes in a gatefold jacket with a picture of a nice outer space scene. They are a sci-fi metal band after all. Pretty cool. As for favorites, definitely Hidden Species, Vitrification of Blood Part 2. Also the instrumental track, Meticulous Soul Devourment, and especially the closing title track. In other words, the entirety of Side B. So definitely a chaotic and atmospheric record with angular structures weaving between brutal and ethereal. Definitely not a straight death metal record by any stretch, when you factor in the occasional musical detours these tracks take. But if you don't mind that and you dig the whole sci-fi metal thing, you might enjoy this album. As for me, I'm good with it and would probably drag it out when the mood strikes, but I do find their later material more compelling and likelier to revisit. Next is a live album from Danish thrash metal band Artillery. This is Raw Live at Copenhagen, released in 2024 by Mighty Music. So the band's performance was recorded at the Copenhagen Metal Festival in Copenhagen, Denmark on June 18th, 2022. Lineup for the band on this recording still has drummer Joshua Madsen before his tragic death in 2023, as well as vocalist Michael Bastholm Dahl, who left the band shortly after and was replaced by Iron Fire singer Martin Steen. Of course, Artillery has gone through a number of lineup changes over the decades. Quite a few, in fact. As for the sound on this one, it's pretty full and balanced. A bit on the raw side, but just enough to give it some punch. Still a very professional recording, and you do get some of the audience in the background and between tracks, which, as you know, is something I require in a live album. Definitely audience participation throughout, but not excessive. There is a little bit of call and response in Comaniac, but thankfully it's very short. And unfortunately, no songs from Fear of Tomorrow, their first album. However, there is an otherwise decent spread of tracks from their discography, but with the album only being one LP, the selection is a bit minimal. Even still, they did choose some real bangers, including Comaniac and Terror Squad, to name a couple. Also, 2 tracks were dropped for the vinyl version that appear on other formats. Those songs are Bomb Food and Turn Up the Rage, which were likely omitted for space constraints on the vinyl. Of the 2, I would have liked Bomb Food to somehow end up on this record, even if you had to drop a track for it. I don't know, maybe 10,000 Devils could go. I don't know, it's hard to say, as this is really a great set list. Anyways, vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP, Classic Black. That's probably that way. There you go. Also have an inner sleeve. Credits here on one side, but we do have a bit of a tribute and dedication to their late drummer here. I would highly recommend that you check this out and read it. Very respectful, very cool. Yeah. As for favorites, definitely By Inheritance, classic track, also The Challenge, and Comaniac. Also in Thrash We Trust is pretty decent and actually works better as a live track. There's also a lyric video available for The Challenge. You can find that at the Mighty Music YouTube channel. So a really solid mix of the old and the new from Artillery, including material from their most recent studio album back in 2021 called X. In fact, this live material has prompted me to go back and restream X because I really didn't give that album much of a chance when it came out. But I might actually buy it now because it seems I've warmed up to it quite a bit, in no small part because of this live album. So yeah, solid live record from a thrash band that should have gotten more attention than they did in the classic era. Definitely glad I bought this. Next up is the 18th studio album from American guitarist Paul Gilbert. This is the Dio album, released in 2023 by Music Theories Recordings. So this album is probably going to need a little bit of an explanation. I mean, obviously we have guitarist Paul Gilbert, though he's also playing bass on this one. You might remember Gilbert from Racer X or Mr. Big, depending. On this record, he has chosen to cover a number of tracks from the musical career of Ronnie James Dio, so we get songs originally done by Black Sabbath, Rainbow, and Dio. Sorry, Elf. But not only is this an instrumental record, Gilbert also plays the vocal lines on the guitar. So an interesting take on a cover tunes album. But the question is, does it work? Well, let's get into that. One thing I really dig here is the extent to which vocal mimicry is pulled off, and Holy Diver really comes to mind here. A lot of the subtleties of Dio's voice are well captured, down to the moans, hums, and high notes. I mean, it's almost eerie at times. Also, definitely some great use of layering guitar parts, often for harmonic effect, for the regular guitar parts as well as the vocal emulating guitar parts. Drumming is serviceable and occasionally good, but not much more than that. Not a lot of that classic shred you might remember from Gilbert doing in Racer X. Of course, that's not this kind of record as it stands, so it's also not entirely expected. But there is a tiny bit of it here and there, notably in the solos, just in case you were missing it. Kill the King is a good example of that. Also a nice mix of styles, which the track selection intendedly requires. We get bluesy, speedy, heavy, a bit of boogie, and more, depending on track, which brings in the variety. Gilbert also doesn't stick to one guitar tone and pretty much fashions his sound in service to the individual track. So not samey in that respect from one song to the other. Also, 2 tracks were omitted for the vinyl version. Both Man on the Silver Mountain and Heaven and Hell are missing. And while I'm fine with the former not here, leaving off Heaven and Hell seems like a really big mistake. I would have maybe bumped Country Girl and even Lady Evil for it, even though I love both of those songs, but maybe that's just me. And to be fair, there is a lot of note for note going on here where I would have appreciated some more of Gilbert's signature flair. We do get some of that flair, but I wanted a little more of it at times. Not a deal breaker, though. Anyways, vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP. Red. Cool graphics there. Gotta have the dragon. It is Dio, after all. Let's get an insert. We get the story about how he came up with the idea to do this specific tribute album, as well as the recording of it and the playing on it and all of that. On the reverse, we have credits and all of that. There you go. Favorites on this one, Stand Up and Shout, one of my favorite Dio tracks ever. Also Holy Diver and The Last in Line. But I especially recommend checking out Holy Diver first. Definitely a great song. Though to be fair, many of these are so worth checking out, and not just the specifically Dio tracks that I picked. I mean, go into the Sabbath ones too, and the Rainbow, they're pretty good as well. So to be honest, this record will be more for the guitar freaks and maybe some of the diehard Dio fans. I mean, others might misread this as subversive. And I'm thinking the rest might dismiss this as a gimmick or treat it as a casual listen, but I'm not so harsh on this one. I actually dig it. I think this is a great background record, but I'd also give it some active listening when the mood strikes. I mean, hell, I even sang along to some of these tracks when I was checking it out. Because karaoke? I don't know. Overall, it's a respectful, well-executed, and talented tribute to one of the greatest singers and songwriters in heavy metal. And it should likely be consumed in the spirit of that. Rest in peace, Ronnie James Dio. Next is the second studio album from international black and death metal band Ultimus. This is Epic, released in 2024 by Season of Mist. So the cowboy hat is back. That's right, David Vincent and his death metal supergroup have returned with their second album. Of course, it's still Vincent on vocals, Flo Mounier on drums, and Runa Eriksson on guitar, but now adding Ipa TVS on bass. TVS stands for a Dutch name that's way too hard for me to pronounce, so TVS it is. Anyways, a discordant and atmospheric instrumental track briefly brings in the creepy, and then drops hard into a metal groove with the title track. And right away, you can hear Vincent's vocals have changed a bit from the last record, to put it mildly. While still gruff, there's also some better enunciation and an increase in what I might call a sort of shaky, clean snarl of sorts. Some will dig it, some will definitely not. For the most part, it's effective and epic. See what I did there? He also brings in some deep choral chants at times, which work well, especially in the track Invictus. Not so much of Vincent's trademark rolled R's on this album, which I kind of missed a little bit. But all of that isn't to say that some of what you loved about the debut record is simply gone. But whether you feel those elements are consistent or simply recycled can be up for debate. I feel you can hear either. It's just not a crushing attack like Something Wicked was, and that might turn some folks away. Thankfully, I'm just not one of those. The one track I can't imagine the most listeners having an issue with is, of course, Mephisto Manifesto. One of the slower tracks on the record, it also has some vocal choices that might come off as goofy to some. The almost Danzig-level cleans in the chorus mixed with the over-pronounced staccato verse lines might seem a bit too much. I'm not a fan of the track in general, but I'm also wondering if it'll grow on me over time. Can't say for sure. The riffs in it, however, are really great, so there's that. Flipping over to side 2 of this record, I feel we get a better run of tracks overall. Scorcher is blasty and growly and everything I dug about the debut record. Invictus amply follows suit while weaving in some of that grandiosity. Yes, that's a word. Overall, side 2 is conspicuously stronger than side 1. As for the vinyl variant on this one, it is 1 LP, gold and black marble, limited to 700 copies. Also comes with a booklet, pictures of the 4 members of the band. There you go there. And it opens up. Mr. Cowboy Hat himself, as well as the drummer. It also has a gatefold with full lyrics and some very minor credits there in the center. Pretty cool. I'm also really digging the foil stamping on the front and back cover. I mean, I don't know. What can I say? I dig fancy packaging. Anyways, favorites on this one are Miserere, Scorcher, and Invictus, but especially Scorcher, so maybe check that one out before the others. There's also a music video available for Miserere, a visualizer video for Scorcher, and an audio track for Invictus, so basically my favorites. Anyways, find all 3 at the Season of Mist YouTube channel. So this is definitely not a straight Black Death album. As the name suggests, Epic is firmly rooted in the grandiose with more atmosphere and vocal style changes and less of the blackened and fewer moments of speed. There's a little bit to get used to here, and I do like more of what's on the back half of this record than on the front half. It's not a bad album, but a bit inconsistent for me. But I'm still listening to it though. So there's that. Next up is the 5th studio album from American death metal band Skeletal Remains. This is Fragments of the Ageless, released in 2024 by Century Media Records. So no intro at all, just straight into the machine gun riffs, groove beats, and menacing bass. Vocals are shouty and growling with some of the vitriol and hellish energy from a clear Morbid Angel influence. Solos tend to move through some of that same influence as Chaos, but also at times some moments of Chuck from Death's proggy cascading fretwork, and then at other times a lot of haunting melodic runs, harmonic passages, and tremolo madness. Much of the brutality here is brought by an effective guitar and drum combo, one that is utterly pulverizing at a pretty consistent rate. Definitely a pattern of groove, grind here, but it works. For the most part, the album is a straight death metal record, but with some interesting change-ups and other flourishes here and there to keep it moving along. Definitely not bored. Not at all. Also, we get 2 instrumentals on the record, both on side 2, one short and one not as short. The first is Ceremony of Impiety. It's a creepy and almost symphonic number that wouldn't be out of place on either Morbid Angel's second album specifically, or even an 80s King Diamond record. The second instrumental, Evocation, The Rebirth, clocks in at a little over 5.5 minutes and brings us a lot of creepy chugs, single note riffing, a very cool isolated bass line, soaring solos, lots of double bass, and some more of that angular song structure that you might hear from the early days of, say it with me now, Morbid Angel. Also, the track Even fades out, which as some of you know, I love. Yes, I love fade outs. Like Brick Tamblyn loves lamps, I love fade outs. There's a reference for you. Anyways, vinyl variant on this one is 1 LP opaque spring green. It is limited to 500 copies. Also, we get an insert, picture of the band, as well as some credits, and full lyrics on the reverse. I'm also really digging the gatefold here. It's continued artwork from the cover, though I gotta say I like this artwork better than the cover. I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Let me know in the comments either way, but yeah, maybe this could have been the cover. Anyways, favorites on this one are To Conquer the Devout, Forever in Sufferance, and Verminous Embodiment. Also, Void of Despair is pretty damn up there for me as well, so maybe check out all 4. Anyways, music videos are out for To Conquer the Devout, Void of Despair, and Relentless Appetite. Check those out at the Century Media Records YouTube channel. So while this album won't win any awards for innovation or having any sort of leading the pack quality, Fragments of the Ageless is a very strong death metal offering that is brutal, frantic, and thoroughly worthy of repeat spins. And yes, it's also a bit of a love letter to Morbid Angel, which you probably already gathered. If you dug their last album, The Entombment of Chaos, there is no reason why you shouldn't pick up this one as well. Good stuff. So something else I picked up that I have less to talk about, but is certainly worth showing, namely this particular issue of Metal Hammer magazine, which has a bit of an explanation attached to it. So I started to look for this issue. I saw it on the internet. I was really excited about it for a reason I'm going to get to in a minute, especially for what was included with it. Basically, I couldn't find it anywhere. I called Barnes & Noble. I called all sorts of other folks that sell magazines and periodicals, and I was like, where is this? It is the March 2024 issue. I should mention that. This is not the US edition, and that's why I couldn't find it. This is specifically the German version. The US version had Bruce Dickinson on the cover, which is why I couldn't find it. I did find this German edition online. I had to purchase it directly from Metal Hammer's German website. I did use a little bit of Google Translate to do it. So that's clearly what I did, obviously, and here it is. Of course, the big reason I bought this was for the exclusive 7-inch single attached to it. Obviously, Judas Priest. They are both the front cover story as well as the exclusive single band. It has Crown of Thorns on one side as well as a live version to Painkiller. Very cool. I can also show you the vinyl. It is black, 7-inch. There we are. And there's the graphic for you. Very cool. They did do something very similar. I should say Metal Hammer specifically did something very similar to this with their Firepower single release. I believe it had Firepower on one side and I think it was Breaking the Law Live on the other side. I should mention both live songs from this as well as that were from the Battle Cry album, the live album from way back. Pretty cool. The magazine's pretty interesting. Again, it is in German, so I can't read it, but, you know, lovely pictures and all that to look at. I do dig the layout. I'm just going to give you the Judas Priest article specifically. Lots to read. Got Glenn down there. Very nice. And that. Lots to read. You don't need to read all this. But there you go. Anyways, very cool magazine. Metal Hammer. I have read it before, but interesting to have the German version. I'm especially excited to have this single. Very cool. It's exclusive to this. You can't get it anywhere else. Unless you chase it down in Discogs, and I'm sure they'll charge $1 million for it. Or at least like $30, $40, $50. Some outrageous sum. But anyways, if you can still get it, Metal Hammer's German website, you have to go to the German one specifically to get it. Might still have copies. I don't know. This is the March 2024 issue, and it's already April, so I don't know. But give them a shot. Who knows? So a bit of variety this month. I mean, some new, some old, some live. Still need to spend some more time with that Ultimus record, but I'm definitely on board with Skeletal Remains and that live artillery record. What do you think about these albums? Maybe you got others that you're a bit more excited about? You should let me know what you got and what looks good for future purchases, as well as anything else that makes sense in the comments below. And of course, if you just stumbled on my channel by way of this video and you're wondering what else it is that I do here, my name is Matt. This is the Accusation Network, where each and every week I do videos on classic and modern metal, as well as metal vinyl collecting. If you like that and you haven't subscribed yet, I would appreciate it if you did, but also maybe like this particular video and share out some of my videos with some of your friends on social media. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.